Our story begins in a not-so-distant future. Like most women in this society, Wan Yang's only role is to be a mother. But she's not allowed to just go ahead and get pregnant. A suitable embryo is provided by the state for her. After the insertion, the doctor also gives her the embryo guide, where she can find all the necessary instructions. Years later, Duan is the guest of honor at a special ceremony. She is a celebrity mother now. Her son aced the qualification test that every kid takes at the age of 15. That one test determines their entire future. No pressure, right? The minimum score is 20, but anything less than 95 is bad. Underperformers get terrible housing, and so do their mothers, as the government blames them too. But that's not the case of the lucky few who are here tonight. In her speech, Wan says the secret to raise an overachiever is lots of love. During the Q&A session, someone asks about her other embryo. In the audience, a little girl named Ruowa looks excited to hear them talking about her. The woman wants to know if the public should be expecting another perfect score this time. But Wan doesn't answer. In fact, she freezes completely. The show host has to intervene with a reprimand about that kind of question. It's not like their guests can predict the future. In another part of town, there's a heated debate going on among a group of doctors. They are trying to determine the cause of a strange phenomenon. Over 100 kids are in some kind of coma, all of a sudden. It's a nationwide problem now. No one can explain it, or find a way to wake them up. That's when Dr. He barges in with a discovery. All affected kids were struggling with their grades. They knew the qualification test was coming, and their minds simply shut down from the fear of annihilation. His boss is furious to hear such a nasty rumor from a fellow doctor. The government does not destroy teenage embryos like that. What do you think this is? A dystopia? Well, never mind. The same boss also says they should give up then. If these are all dumb kids, it makes no difference if they're awake or not. Protesting loudly, Dr. He is dragged away by security guards. Later on, there's a disturbing incident in a subway station. Wan is there with her daughter, and a line of students is coming in the opposite direction. Their mothers are walking by their side, and there are armed guards monitoring everything. Suddenly, a woman comes near them, looking very agitated. She starts to shout that they must run because they're about to be destroyed. All the mothers instantly panic. Each one grabs their kid and try to escape, running from the guards. Once the chaos is past them, Wan waits at the platform while Ruowa goes to the restroom. The girl is startled when an older woman comes out of nowhere. Her name is Lingna, and she seems to know a lot about the Yang family. She warns Ruowa about being too obedient, and then she gives her a large key as a souvenir of their encounter. The girl is excited to tell her mom about the weird lady, but decides to keep it to herself when she sees Lingna on the news. Her son, Dr. He, was just sentenced to death. He was considered a threat to national security because of his heretical ideas on talent development. His mother was stripped of her gold medal, as she was too incompetent to keep her son in line. At home, Ruowa is learning about important milestones in the history of science, like human cloning. After the lesson is over, Wan talks to the instructor about her daughter's performance. She scored only 30 in the mock exam. Maybe she should be having more tutoring hours. In a cold and objective tone, the tutor explains that her daughter's learning ability is very weak. There's nothing he can do to help her. Wan's gold medal begins to blink. She wonders if it's a bad connection, or something like that. But the annoying tutor has bad news about that too. When a second child turns out to be a failure, those pearl lights can begin to go out. Worried about the future, Wan takes her daughter to the worst part of their town. People call it the pigeon cage. She tells Ruowa that she'll have to live like this if she keeps failing her tests. She looks afraid but tries to find a way out. As a girl, she won't have that kind of job anyway. She'll have an embryo to nurture. One day her embryo will score over 95. And safer. So easy. Wan says she won't be able to pay for educational support, and her embryo will never thrive in a place like this. Once you get that low, you're done for. Back in her horribly sterile home, Juan tries to remove the metal for a moment, but finds out that she's not supposed to. The thing keeps beeping until she puts it back on. At the market, we see that every mother is forced to wear that. As a symbol of their status, it must be visible at all times. And now, one of Juan's pearls seems to be really gone. When she comes back home, one of her neighbors is getting evicted. The woman cries in despair, begging the officers to put her stuff down, and yelling at her son. Juan is mortified to see that. But when the other neighbors begin to surround her, she says what they want to hear. That woman must have failed as a mother. She surely brought this on herself. A few days later, one more light goes out. At the same time, Rua's behavior begins to change. She keeps disrupting the class all the time and rolls her eyes when she's told off. Her friends don't even recognize her anymore. Maybe she has decided to listen to Lingna's advice about excessive obedience. The ADHD diagnosis comes very soon. The doctor says he'll wait to see how it unfolds before prescribing medication. This could be all about the qualification tests and the stress that comes with it. But if her case is severe, there could be some signs of depression or even self-harm on the way. Days later, there's a clash between Rua and her teacher. She behaves erratically, running up the stairs and threatening to jump. Juan arrives just in time to talk to her, while a boy pulls her back to safety. When they get home, Rua's attitude seems back to her normal self. She looks at her mother with affliction, obviously longing for her approval. And that's when we find out Rua is still ignoring Lingna's advice. She never stopped obeying her mother. The whole thing is an act. ADHD is one of the very few things that can make the horrid test go away. But she won't be excused unless she's under medication. With that in mind, Juan hands her teenage daughter a craft knife. Tomorrow is her birthday, and she'll get a bunch of gifts at school. She must rip them apart in front of everyone. Not sure where this lady got her information about ADHD, but maybe she's just throwing in more stuff just to be on the safe side. When the time comes, it is evident that the poor girl is deeply conflicted. She doesn't want to disappoint her mother, but she also cares about her friends. Actually, scratch that. That's just normal life. Rua's choice is much tougher. She can either ruin her mom's life already hated by all her friends. Overwhelmed by the kid's warmth even after her recent stunts, she puts the knife away. Juan is watching everything from her creepy iPad. She is deeply disappointed. After the party, Rua talks to one of her classmates. It's a nice boy named Kaijeng, who sounds happy to see her acting normally again. He tells her to stop comparing herself to her older brother. She is a different person, and she is doing her best. When she comes home, Rua tries to talk to her mother. She promised to study harder if she's allowed to stop pretending. All she wants is to be herself again. Juan is furious. She says she'd rather die than live in the pigeon cage. Trying to change the subject, the girl shows her the key and tells her about Lingna. She asks her if it's true that her brother knew that woman. Juan sends her to bed without an explanation. But now her memories are back to haunt her. Ruji, her son, made that keychain himself. He gave it to her a long time ago, saying it was the key to a treehouse he wanted to build. Juan told him to forget about treehouses and focus on getting her a gold medal, which is all she ever wanted. In the morning, Juan tells her daughter that she can stop pretending to have ADHD for now, but she gives her a deadline to improve her grades, 6 months before the test. If nothing changes, then she'll have to resume the act. Rua is very happy and determined not to waste her second chance. She commits to a very severe study routine. One day, when she is leaving the library, she sees Lingna waiting for her under the stairs. If that's not creepy enough for you, fear not. The lady tells her to investigate what happened to her brother. The official story is that he died in a car crash, but there is much more to it. Before vanishing, Lingna also drops a few hints about the embryo guide. This time Ruwa listens to her and finds the truck driver involved in the accident. He says Ruji threw himself in front of the truck. Juan convinced him to lie to the police about it, promising to help his family. But it never happened. These revelations make Ruwa so distressed that her academic performance begins to drop dramatically. There goes another pearl. Mommy dearest better start packing. Since Lingna's preferred form of contact seems to be materializing out of thin air, Kaijeng is now the only person that Ruwa can talk to. And she desperately needs to share what she found out in the embryo guide. To her horror, it's not even news to him. It's illegal to talk about it, but everyone knows what happens to the kids who score less than 20 in the qualification test. They get destroyed. At home, Juan can see them whispering to each other after class, but thankfully, she can't hear what they say. As her last pearl goes out, she decides to take an unpleasant trip to the pigeon cage. Everyone stares at the fancy lady trying not to vomit. She is here to see Mrs. Xiao, Kaijeng's mom. She tells her to forbid their friendship because it could interfere with their academic performance. Mrs. Xiao is sorry to inform her that, unlike Ruwa, her son is free to make his own choices. Shocked at such blasphemy, Juan points at Dr. He's picture on the wall. No wonder they worship terrorists here, she says. This family is right where they belong. With her grades plunging below 20, Ruwa grows more desperate every day. She also comes to see Kaijeng and meets his mother. After a tender welcome, Mrs. Zhao decides to take her somewhere safe. But Ruwa just can't wait any longer. As they get into an underground passage, she begins to ask many difficult questions. Mrs. Xiao doesn't believe in hiding the truth from children, so she agrees to give her the real answers, no matter how painful they are. First of all, she confirms what her son said before, scoring under the minimum results in a one-way trip to the graveyard. Now the question is what happens to the mother in such cases. Mrs. Xiao says these women are totally doomed. They get thrown in the street and permanently banished from any kind of community or social circle. What about ADHD then? In that case, the mother cannot be blamed for the faulty embryo she was given. Depending on her age, she probably receives a new one to start over. But the child is destroyed all the same as soon as it's confirmed by a doctor. The awful realization about her own mother is too much for her and she passes out. When she comes to, she finds herself sitting in a tent. It's a secret camp organized by the resistance. Ruwa has probably never seen that many colors all at once. Lingna and Kaijeng are there too, as well as a girl she recognizes from that day at the station. These people were inspired by Dr. He and his work. They believe in the free development of each person's talent without standardized tests or predefined tasks. Lingna tells her that Ruoji was the last straw for her son. He didn't want that to happen to any other kid. And then, there was that strange coma, which he believed to be resignation syndrome. Just like her brother, those kids had simply given up on life. But it doesn't have to be that way. The girl from the train station, for example, loves baking. Kaijeng is a builder and he made her an oven. Everyone here is free to pursue their own talent, and no one makes them give up on their dreams. At first, Ruwa felt a bit better. She can see there is still hope, but not for her, unfortunately. Simple tasks are too hard for her, and she can't even help others without getting hurt. Her new friends say that it's only her first day here, and she'll adapt soon. But that's exactly what her tutor kept saying about her grades before. This beautiful day among these good people only makes her feel worse, because it's so painfully evident that she is still the slow horse. So, she leaves a thank you note in her tent and goes back home. Juan is waiting for her, but there's not much they can say to each other now. Ruwa falls unconscious during the shower and is rushed into hospital. The doctors fear another case of the strange coma, but she suddenly wakes up. She begins to tell them everything about Juan, frantically begging for her life. Sadly, that only makes them think she is sicker than they thought. Labeled as a schizophrenic embryo, Ruwa is destroyed. Right after that, Juan gets a new embryo. It's her third chance to get it right. But this time, she also falls unconscious during the procedure. And to her surprise, she wakes up in a cave. Ling Na is there. She tells her that Ruowa visited their camp. They offered her shelter, and they accepted her the way she was. But she chose to come back to her mother, knowing that didn't stand a chance to survive. Juan replies coldly that Ruowa's grades were appalling, and her chances were non-existent from the start. It made no sense to sacrifice herself for that rotten embryo. Ling Na says the resistance is growing, and they have lots of people infiltrated by the government. They made sure to handpick that embryo inside her now. Because of Juan's celebrity status, the rebels are forced to let her go. She keeps coaching the elite on how to be the perfect mother. From the advice she gives them in her new book, we can tell she has not learned absolutely anything. A long time ago, Ruoji told her that he could only be happy as an artist. She threw away all his tools at the first opportunity. Now she's telling the mothers-to-be that they should do the same. Children don't know what they really want until you inform them. She also spends the next 9 months collaborating with the authorities. They eventually bust that camp and detain everybody. During an interview about her book, Juan repeats what's said at the award ceremony. The secret of motherhood is just love, lots of love. And this is the end. This was a recap of the 2018 movie ADHD is Necessary by Miss Move Image Studio, starring Tu Chuan Liu and Yu Quan Wang. What is your opinion about Huan Yang? Why do you think Ruowa decided to go back home? And more importantly, have you finished your homework? Let us know in the comments below with #CinemaRecap. Until next time.